Hello and welcome to The Resilient Artist. Today I'm having a conversation with Caroline Corrie, actor, director, filmmaker, writer, painter, seamstress, musician, composer, mother, and designer and maker of homes. She is a true Renaissance woman, a polymath, a multifaceted, multi-hyphenated dear friend of mine. Caroline is in a way typical of a female actor trying to balance her creativity with ambitions also to be a mother and to be a homemaker, but also to be independently creative, successful, and have a voice, find a community with whom she can collaborate and resonate. It's not been easy and it's taken time, but she has made a movie. Completely conceived by herself, written and directed by her, but supported by her husband and family and her community along the way. It's taken her 8 years to get it finished. She had to teach herself screenwriting, how to finance it, which she and her husband have done together somehow. She has never given up and has told a beautiful story about a woman fighting for her voice to be heard in her own way in the year 1905. It's a beautiful film, and I'm very proud of her as a friend to have got this far. And it's now available. It's been on cinemas around the country, been screened in festivals across the world and received very well. But now there's this new platform specifically curating period dramas, period films, called Your Flicks, onto which Caroline has put her film. And again, this platform is set up by an equally independent-minded female creative, and I think it's the best and loveliest home for such a film, and will no doubt contribute to her efforts to make her next one, which have already begun. It's better to hear all this said by the woman herself, and I hope you enjoy our conversation and come back for more. You and I have known each other for 30 years at least now, and we have a sort of similar education in some respects. We met at university, we went to RADA at different times, but sort of within the same few years. I think we shared tastes and ambitions and similar sort of experiences, I guess, and training and thoughts. But you've had this remarkable individual journey of creativity. I think you've always been one of the most creative people I've ever known. We're here to talk about your film, Shalborne, that you made ostensibly. Well, no, you didn't make it by yourself, but it was your baby, your creative vision, and you self-generated everything. It's now been out for a while. I've seen it and loved it, and I know that it represents a particular time in your life, and not a short time either. I just wonder where you could take us to the point of its conception and why and how you came up with the idea and what was in the background of that when it first struck you.
Yeah, so I went to RADA, as you said. That was 5 years after university. So I had 5 years of running a theatre company, which was another independent project. It was hard work, but we got awarded with various things, such as a Time Out's Critics' Choice Award. We were speaking to Nicholas Heitner about putting on one of our own productions at the National. Things were going well. And then I got into RADA, and various people had other career things. So we dispersed. And for me, going to RADA was going to be the answer to my commercial success, in the sense that it would give me what I needed to get a good agent and actually work and make a living as an actor. And I had 3 of the best years of my life. I absolutely loved it. I got a great agent and worked a bit, but by then I was 30 and I got married. About 4 years later, I had twins, and that I carried on going to auditions, took the twins with me. But it's challenging. It's challenging to be a mother. And all the while I knew I was making choices that were taking me further and further away from what I truly, truly loved. As you know, the industry is tough. And for me, it was maybe too much of a sacrifice to make that choice of saying, I'm not going to marry, I'm not going to have a family, I'm going to give everything I have to working, because I wasn't getting the jobs that I would have wanted to maybe entice me that way. So I did choose a family, and that immediately it was just the sort of downhill run really into not working at all. So when my third child was 2, and my agent retired and I wasn't kept on in the agency, I realized I had nothing at that point. For all the work and all the investment and everything that I'd done as an artist, I was completely and utterly cut off, really, from all the hope. All the while you hope, don't you? Even if you're not getting jobs, you still hope that something might come along. But in some ways that was massively liberating, because I could no longer be hoping that other people would deliver. I had to decide whether I was going to deliver myself or not at all. And for about maybe 24 hours, I did consider, let's just give it up. It's too much. And then after 24 hours, I was like, no, it's been my life since as early as I can remember, I wanted to be on the stage, and that's just what I love doing. It was my happiest place in all the world. So I thought I'll write a play. And then I thought, if I write a play, it's so much work. I've got 3 young children. I was living in France at the time. It's a massive amount of investment for a few performances where minimal number of people will come. But if I write a film, I've got something concrete that I could keep forever and that I can send to everybody. So I started writing a screenplay, having never written a screenplay before. I had to Google, what font do I use for a screenplay? Googling everything. I didn't really know much about it, other than having been in a few screen projects, films and things. And being in the place that I was as a woman with 3 young children, thinking the reason I'm not working is because I've made this choice. One of those reasons is I've made this choice and I can't leave my children. So how much choice do women in the 21st century really have to fulfill their destiny and their identity once they've chosen motherhood, really, or marriage? So then I thought, oh, yeah, has anything really changed since the 1900s and before? And if it has, I'd be interested to map that arc with a series of plays or screenplays for every decade of the 20th century. Where have we come since the start of feminism, if you like, in the 1900s? And as you know, Elliot, we studied women and the theatre at university. So we looked a lot at Bernard Shaw and Ibsen and how they were represented at that time. So I felt like I had some knowledge of that period and women and their representation at that time. And I started looking at big historical moments of the 1900s, and 1905 stood out because of the Bloody Sunday massacre in Russia, which was a horrible event in which workers came to the Winter Palace to appeal for workers' rights, better working conditions, and they were all shot by the palace guards. And that massacre gave the workers the confidence for the revolution. It gave the Bolsheviks the momentum they needed to move forward with that revolution. And that led to the assassination of Franz Ferdinand and then the First World War. And so there was a whole trigger of events that happened following that day. And I could see how female emancipation had kind of followed that path as well, and how as we moved into post-war modern life, that all the opportunities that have gradually become available to women were a result of that sort of historical moment, which for me went back to that day in 1905. So I used that as my sort of anchor point and my allegory for what my female character was going through. And I chose this female character who would be my age so that I could play her, so that I could cast myself, and so that I would have a part to play that I could then show to people and say, look, here I am. This is me as an actor. I'd love an agent, please, if possible, to get me other work. And this is what I can do. So that's how it started. Now, and I literally started with, okay, what can I feasibly film? What can I afford to film? And so I had a woman on Dartmoor. I knew that was possible because I had me and I could go to Dartmoor to film. And then, why is she on Dartmoor? Oh, maybe she's escaping something. Oh, is she on her own? No, she's with a dependent who is her father. And who's she escaping them with her father? She's escaping all those things that are holding her back from being herself, and that became her husband. And so the story evolved.
And am I right in thinking that there's some link to that Bloody Sunday massacre in the storyline?
Yes.
Isn't that the
Yes.
backdrop to what's happening in England?
So I pulled out some real historic facts, which were the fact that the Tsar was writing to British aristocrats asking for money to fund his war, the Russo-Japanese War. And so I started the film with a letter. That was also inspired by Lady Windermere's fan, which we studied at university. The fan, was a big feature. So I thought, I'm going to start with a letter. That's going to be my object, which, triggers the drama. So I started with the letter that comes from the Tsar appealing to the main protagonist, Helen, appealing to her husband for financial help.
That is a kind of classic early 20th century type setup for the period that you're writing. I mean, there are resonances, as you say, with Oscar Wilde, or a Bernard Shaw, or one of those well-made plays where something drops in the first act that sets the protagonist off on a new journey. And as you say, we get to that image of you on the moors with your father within the first 20 minutes of the film. The image of you pushing an old man in a wheelbarrow, like a handmade wooden wheelbarrow, across the moors. This extraordinary shot that you've got, I think it's up above, so it must be a drone. In my mind, it's like super lofty, beautiful landscape. I mean, amazing production value for what must have been a relatively cheap day of filming, but costly to you, no doubt. And there you are in your period dress as a 40-something-year-old woman carrying this man over the hill to escape. There is the image of Caroline's artistic journey and plight and tenacity, that you have created this film and completed it. I mean, were you aware that you were, in a way, creating a heroine's plight that was really about yourself, irrespective of the bloody massacre or the history of Russia?
Not so much at the time, but oh my goodness, it did occur to me probably halfway through, which seems like really far through. But everyone says write your own stories, and this wasn't intended to be my own story, but it is amazing when you create something, how much of your inner self comes out in the work. And and there was a point at which I just thought, oh my goodness, this is a metaphor for my life. And actually it was so strong that, without spoiling the story, she is unsuccessful in her pursuit of happiness and independence. And in the back of my mind, I was like, oh no, if I write this ending, is this going to foreshadow what happens in my own life with this production? And in some ways it has, actually, because to sort of jump forward after 7 years of production, and then it went into festivals, and then there's been a whole subsequent 2 years probably of it screening in festivals, and the whole distribution process, and a cinema release, and everything that I've had to learn and go through after completing the film, which I thought would be the end, but it's definitely not. I really actually am sort of back at square one. In some ways, I'm back where I started, because I haven't got an agent, and I haven't got work, and I'm still a mother. And if I want to continue to have the unbelievably fulfilling creative experiences that I've had, I have to initiate it again. And I'm still on my own in that. And my ambition for the next project, which I have written, we can talk about, is I have to be able to collaborate from the beginning. I have to be able to team up with, to co-produce, or I can't do the whole thing on my own again, simply because, I mean, it's possible, but it would just be wrong. You have to evolve, don't you? You have to improve the model.
Yes, that's a good way of looking at it.
I know so much about the industry now, and about production, and what incentivizes producers even to produce, or whatever it is. I know the workings of the industry. So it's a miracle, really, that Shalborne did ever screen and have a cinema release and do all that it did, based on what I now know, that you don't tend to just land in with a project, and it get seen and screened.
So with all of that, those years of experience in, mistakes, but then wins and manipulations and improvisations, do you now have a different toolkit? Would you have you've got an idea of what this model could be for you now to expedite some of those connections or to aim more clearly at the goals that you discovered as you went before? Is that clearer to you now, or is it still feels quite improvisational?
It's much clearer. I could literally write you a sort of 10-step plan on how to deliver to some extent. But with that comes A, huge compromise, and B, you need very good connections and luck as well. But going back to what we were talking about, the artistic fulfillment and, the tension between, is it a commodity or is it just a gift or a good in the world, that's really, really hard for production companies to level that with. We need to pre-sell this project, or we need to know that we've got investment and that investment is going to be returned, and these are the criteria with which we have to do that. And that immediately inhibits the creative process the moment you bring in that commercial back end. So the question that I have to put to myself is, I've just finished the new screenplay. Do I just want to sell the screenplay to a production company and get on and write the next one? Or do I want to be really heavily involved in the creative process as I was before, which I do? And so already I have my conditions, which would potentially put off any potential co-producer. Like you have to work out, what are my priorities? And really, for me, especially at my age, I feel like my priority is to create as much as I can. Obviously, I'd love to sell, and I need to make a commercial success of it to some extent, but my priority is creating. That's who I am. So if it doesn't fulfill me creatively, then why would I be doing it?
Yeah, can you imagine the alternative? Not to say that this shouldn't come and that you shouldn't just snap at it if somebody walks in and says, can you do this very polished piece of soap opera that pays you a lot, turn up for a few weeks? Can you imagine yourself always harking back to what you have created by way of your own independent creative, rather than offload it all to the streamlined, taken care of by somebody else type employment?
No, it wouldn't be the answer. But what it would do is it would connect me to other artists. I just love to work with other people. So even if the material was drab, I would enjoy being in that production process and just being with everyone doing their jobs. And I would love it, actually. I would love it. But if it was something I'd written and other people were coming in and making a hash of it, then maybe I wouldn't feel quite so enthusiastic. My hope is that in reality, I'm not back at square one, because I have made a film that people enjoy, and that surely has to stand for something, that I've done it now on my own. Could you please sort of support me, and I can do even better?
And have you written into this second idea, or this current idea, elements of support or transition that would help you get to what you've just described? I mean, for instance, are you already talking to previous collaborators that you now know, and new contacts you've made through the film? Or do you hold them in your mind's eye? Like, this is going to be, I'm trying to work towards that festival or this place, that platform. I know now that if I want it on a streaming platform, it would be better if I made it like this. Are you making judgments like that? Or are you being just as singular in your approach to history, character and context that you had all those years back on Shalborne?
So a bit of both, but I think more being true to a story that I have. I had an idea and I kind of had to run with it. And all the while, for instance, I went to the Cannes Film Festival last year, and I had a really interesting chat with the head of acquisitions for MK2, which is a big French film company. And as I was talking to her, I just thought, I know that my next film would not be something that they would acquire. And so why am I not writing something that I know that she would pick up on her desk and say, oh, this is good? But equally, when you have an idea, you kind of just have to let that evolve in you, don't you? And actually, So this next film, just to quickly put into context, set in 1977. It's a very English film. It will be set in Devon again, like Shalborne was, because that's where I live. And I feel like Devon should be well represented in film. And I have a good following now in the Southwest. And it's very English. It's very relevant to where we're at as a country now, actually, because 1977 economically and culturally and really, there are a lot of parallels to be drawn with today. So it's a romantic comedy as well. If it was a slightly abstract idea 2 or 3 years ago, but it was just boiling in me and I was just letting it grow, it's become into something that I think would be very politically relevant.
And having that political edge is always important to you, or is it tied to your own personal sense of, I don't know, female politics or identity politics that you're writing about your experience as a woman?
Well, I think first and foremost, it has to be a good story, and it
Yeah.
has to be fun to watch, and it has to be beautiful. I think, like aesthetically, compelling. But then the political thing is it's always just there softly, so that if people want to reflect on, oh yeah, that's really interesting, I can see a parallel there, or that it's there. But primarily, it's about the characters and the story. I guess it's just amazing how little we connect with the past when it informs so much of our present. And probably I'm guilty of that. Obviously, there are other people who do know their history very well, but it's so much of what we experience today is a direct result of decisions that were made 20 or 30 or 50 years ago or 100 years ago, and it's just escalated into the situation that we're in.
Yeah.
Unless you understand that, you can't really make a fair judgment really on what we're seeing now and how we got to this place. So that always interests me.
You've gone back to the year of your birth, haven't you, there?
And the year of like incredible music and aesthetically, the fact that you can have punks and sort of second generation hippies, and then there's the post-war conservatives who are raised by Victorian parents. There's so many different cultural groups all joined together.
Smashed up together, all down in Devon.
All down in Devon.
Your relationship to an audience there is growing because you're doing these individual screenings and community screenings, I believe. I don't know if it works like this anymore, because when I made a couple of short films, we did go to local county funding, Screen Yorkshire or what have you, that were also supporting TV shows that I was perhaps filming up in Yorkshire at one point. Quite a lot of work was going on there when I did Lost in Austin, say. Do you have a relationship to Screen Devon? Are they going to help you as a local artist, or doesn't that exist anymore?
So that's a relationship I want to develop, because they didn't exist when I started Shalborne, weirdly. And all the people I reached out to, the BFI and Creative England then existed. I didn't get any support for Shalborne at all from anyone. But I feel now maybe, they might take me seriously. I don't know. I would hope that Screen Devon would, having had a successful cinema run. And lots of people that I met on the cinema tour in the Southwest really want to work on my next project. And they're all connected to Falmouth University, or there's quite a few in Cornwall. So the sort of Southwest hub. But, the BFI Southwest sort of ends at Bristol. They'd probably say that it didn't. And I'm saying this publicly. But really, no one thinks about Devon and Cornwall. Possibly just, Somerset is just about on the sort of south of Somerset, when there are so many artists in Devon and Cornwall and amazing filmmakers. And Cornwall has quite a good film community. Devon is not so well known. It's more of a location, but it's coming.
Tell us about some of the crazy basic creativity that you put into every frame before and during its shooting.
So every shoot took about 3 months to prepare. And that was how I could break it down into a manageable sort of task, if you like, of I know I need these costumes, I need these props. These are the actors who are going to come down, hopefully, if they're available. And set it. So then go out and find the location. On eBay, I bought mostly all the material for the costumes. So start making the costumes. And that all happened at sort of 2:00 in the morning, because obviously I had to put the children to bed. So they were sort of in bed by 8, clear up start getting the sewing machine out. So yeah, but the amazing things that I found. So on eBay, for instance, I just looked for, by chance, would I find share certificates for the Chinese Eastern Railway, which features in the film? I found actual share certificates for that. I found a picture of the Tsar from 1905 that was in a magazine. So eBay was an amazing resource, and all the props I either made or was able to buy basically through charity shops or online. But then on the days of filming, oh my goodness, these wonderful people who most of a lot of the actors came down on the train from London, and they usually came down the night before. So they stayed in our house, which wasn't very big. So we had to move all the children into our room and make up beds and arrange all of that and then feed everyone. And then food had to be made for the next day, for the filming day. So I'd do a big sort of lamb stew or something that could be in a pot and heated on a camping stove, or sausages. We ate a lot of sausages. The children's food I also had to make because they were going to be shifted off somewhere. And then packing all the costumes up, and then I had to do my hair. So basically, by the time I'd fed the actors, cleared up, that was probably near to midnight, and then I'd have to get up at 3 or 4 o'clock to do my hair and to put all the costumes in the Land Rover. And then Charlie, my husband, he was generally driving, but on a lot of the scenes we had boats or we had animals or horses. So with the boats, we live by the sea. We have a boat, which is good. We had our little dinghy, so we could tow out the rowing boats on the dinghy. So Charlie was in charge of that. Charlie also rode a horse, having never ridden before in his life, because the actor wasn't comfortable with it, which is completely understandable because he didn't really ride either. And it was very much just fly by the seat of your pants scenario. And also the weather, there's always a massive consideration there that we were filming mostly outside, mostly using natural light. And amazingly, we managed to dodge some serious weather situations that was never that significant. We managed to get beautiful light and mostly dry.
Yeah.
It rained when it needed to rain. There was a day we had with the horse and carriage where we just had the horse and carriage for the day, and it rained on and off for the whole day. So every time it stopped raining, we had to dry the carriage off, dry off the horses, do the shoot, and then it rained again. So then we had to put, so that was really stop-start. So there was a point when the tide it was a spring tide, and the tide just literally evacuated the estuary in about 5 minutes, leaving the cameraman and one of the actors stranded in a rowing boat about 500 meters out on some mud. And again, Charlie, my husband, waded out through the mud to try to pull the rowing boat into a slipstream of water that remained to get them back on shore, because that was at the start of the day, and that would have been the end of the shoot if we didn't have the cameraman or the actor. When I filmed a horse scene on the beach, and right at the start I fell off, and luckily my costume and my hair remained intact and I didn't break anything, because that would have also been a write-off. I don't know. All these things. I mean, every film I think probably has a very long catalogue of events where it could have gone horribly wrong.
The remarkable thing about your movie is that the aesthetic of it is astounding, the beauty of it. Your DOP, whom I know you worked with over all these years, did a fantastic job with you. But you weren't pitching for a film that was of our time on an iPhone, sort of in contemporary dress. Even that's a challenging idea for most of us. The endeavor of doing this with iPhones and jeans and T-shirts in your own gaff is still hard. People don't do it. The creation of an artist is obviously often somebody who does it and somebody who doesn't. You might have the same ideas and the same talent, but you're not really the real deal until you do it and you complete it, which is what you've done. Not pandering to any contemporary aesthetics or standards. You've gone for like old school. I mean, I know you shot it on digital, but a period piece, to do a period film on no budget by yourself is making one of the hardest rods for your own back now.
Partly, I mean, I knew I had the landscapes. That was my sort of biggest gift, and I knew that I could make the costumes as well. And that they would be feasible, that in the 1900s, someone would have made their own clothes. So
Mm,
the moment you go into a modern context where you have to think about cars and product placement or
mm,
all those technological things, the lighting would, maybe natural lighting wouldn't work so well.
mm,
So in some ways it was, I'd written the screenplay, but then it was afterwards that I thought, actually, in some ways, I think this is easier because you can be much more decisive about, okay, this is the costume. I can make this costume and I'm going to put it in the context of a beautiful landscape. And immediately you've got cinema. Whereas if it's
yeah,
2000 and it's 2026 and you need maybe more an urban landscape or something that speaks more of that time, there's
mm.
going to be a lot more things within the shot that have to set that time frame.
You're working definitely to your assets, aren't you? Like, yeah, I mean, whether you consciously did that or not, the fact that you are a seamstress, a painter, an actor who lives in Devon with a boat, albeit a dinghy, or access to a horse or whatever you've got, you were writing to those assets. So, yeah, there's a lesson behind what the paraphernalia is. And that's why it's wise of you to write again for the same locations, but perhaps they'll be seen differently in your next film. And also, you're including a different kind of period, which perhaps brings with it different challenges of aesthetic.
Definitely. It's more ambitious. And in Shalborne, we have very small casts because I knew it would be challenging to get anyone together. We also we had the still camera, everything was still. And at the very outset, the DOP was saying, oh, this isn't really going to work because everyone's moving cameras all the time. The camera's moving all the time. And I was sure that not only was it easier, but I wanted that because it was more classic.
Or to
And
lock off the camera to keep
yeah,
it.
now
Yeah.
and now everyone's doing that. But we were doing that 9 years ago. We started off doing that. It's very popular now, isn't it?
And
And
what camera did you use? Did your DOP
Red,
provide all that?
Red
It was
Digital,
Red.
yeah, which he had. But he explained to me it's all about the lenses. I don't know if you
Yeah.
know that. It's so much about the lenses more than the camera.
Yeah.
But yeah, so with this next one, there's parties, there's a festival, there's like some big car scenes where I'm going to need extras, but I think that'll be fun. It's how you shoot it, isn't it, as well, to make it look like there's more people than there are. Or I think everyone locally will happily put a pair of flares on and come and dance.
Well, some of them will still be wearing flares, I guess,
Yeah,
as well,
probably.
if they're of my vernacular.
There's also something about um, creating the shots, from nothing, or creating those scenes from nothing, where you're really being selective about, I want this car because it's like that, or I want people to wear these clothes because it works aesthetically.
Mm.
That's a similar experience to the sound and the music, where you're really deciding, okay, I want silence here, then I want a bird song, then we're going to have 3 notes of music, then we're going to have the bell, then we're going to, literally every single sound, there's nothing goes into the production that hasn't been considered and very deliberately placed. Whereas I guess, again, if you're doing contemporary and it's a bit more free flowing and you're just filming what's going on around, there's a lovely fresh energy to that, but you haven't literally meticulously created the scene.
I feel that tunes into your nature rather well,
Probably. Yeah.
which is why maybe, it's inevitable that you found your own groove.
Mm.
I know that you would have liked things to work out slightly differently by way of your acting career before perhaps you had children or even alongside it. But I think you've confronted or been confronted by the issue that most female actors encounter if they're going to start a family or even with just aging, I think. So, I think you wouldn't be alone there, and that would perhaps have been inevitable one way or another. But the fact that you are somebody with deeper talents than most actors, I include myself in that. You've never been singular. You've always been very mercurial, and in a sense, of course, that's your strength. But that must have been a challenge in a way.
I think, like, on an existential level, if you looked at why I haven't, because I've never even really had a job doing anything. I've never been able to get work doing anything. And I think it's been hard for people to place me. So I think it could be true, yeah, that sometimes if you're too autonomous and you're too visionary on such a wide scale, it's going to be hard for anyone to just slot you in, isn't it, to a neat little place.
And you're like that in your private life. I mean, without going into anything personal, the way you and Charlie and, you guys run your life in terms of how you've developed properties and designed your living environments and changed your living environments. It's not conventional. You do not do things that most people want to sort of slot into and be protected by or be cosseted by or carried through by. You're always changing the script. So it seems like it would be impossible for you to have ended up just doing one thing, whatever the medium, whatever the craft.
Yeah, I think that's true. It struck me when I was at Cannes last year as well, when I was making that choice of, am I just going to toe the party line and do what I know I need to just deliver to make a commercial product? Or am I going to be a creator and sort of be individual in that? It really struck me that that more than ever, we need people who are independent in their creativity and not just following a party line, because at the moment that is going towards a very, very prescriptive system of, this is what we need, this is how we're going to do it, and we can use AI to help us. Because when you
Yeah,
are that singular in your lineup of things that need to happen, you can employ AI and you can start to take the creators out of the process.
yeah,
And I really saw that so visibly, that there is a massive tension now between independent art and commercial art. It's the way we're going further and further apart from each other. And so I actually had this real moment of calling, in a way, that I thought, no, I am going to be the artist to the end, and I'm not going to allow anything to compromise what I believe is right aesthetically or creatively from a completely soul-driven point of view,
yeah,
an inspiration point of view. And I think, being true to that is really important, because it's always traditionally been the artists who have called society to account, isn't it? Or called
yeah.
people to look at themselves. And we hold a mirror up to society. That is our responsibility.
Mm,
Um, and also the way that you convey different characters with their frailties
mm.
perhaps enables us as a community to be more accepting of people who aren't what we would expect them to be. But you bring a humanity, don't you? As an actor, whatever character you're playing, you bring their humanity out, and you say, look, this is us. We're all part of this. I think the moment you start having to compromise it and contrive it towards a certain goal, you're not doing your job really as an artist. So I felt really strongly about that.
I can see that's true in your endeavor always, and I think your life will represent that. No matter what happens, for the next 40 years of it, I think that side of you is so strong. You will always bow the tree towards that particular sun. But let's hope also that there is, further chance to collaborate and have investment from other people in order to make that perhaps more far-reaching, or I wouldn't say it will ever get easier. I don't think filmmaking ever gets easier for people with more funds or more people. It's a watermark that always goes up, and you're always beset with problems, and some of them will be totally irrelevant, annoying problems with more money. What you've done is like keep all your problems very much to do with what's going to be on screen in the
Yeah.
way that you want them to be. And that control and that simplicity and the concision of that is something that you have in your favor, that you would probably end up sacrificing something of if another element came in too heavily, and even perhaps just a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah. There's a lot to be said for a small crew, and yeah, that's that space to think, as film sets that have so many people makes it hard for the actors, doesn't it, to just be in the moment.
Mm.
Uh, and more films would be made with smaller crews as well, I think. We could be much more spontaneous about, there's 20 of us, let's get together and make a film.
I mean, I know these things are never easy. It's taken you years to make this one particular film, and so regenerating the enthusiasm and ambition for that must be harder knowing how much it took from you this time round, which is possibly why you want to shift the focus. You want to evolve the level on which you work or the people who are there to help you from the beginning, because you know how much is going to be asked of you if you were just to do the same process. Where do you find that idea of resilience? Where do you think your motor is really when it comes to having sort of understood that maybe, acting isn't going to be what it was to you when you were training? What is the motor now? Is it what keeps you going and thinking you want to do more?
Yeah, it's the collaboration 100%, and the desire to just learn and be better, and to evolve. It's just really stimulating for me to work with someone who is more talented than I am, and to see how they deal with situations, and to be inspired by that, and then to learn from that, and then to be able to do it better each time. I think that's what drives me, to always want to learn, and to always want to collaborate, and to always want to kind of, I mean, it's so inspirational to be with people when they're doing their craft well, isn't it? Whether it's watching
Mm.
an amazing footballer, or when people are brilliant, I find that so exciting. I want to be around brilliant people, basically, and share their brilliance, and try and be as brilliant as they are.
But that's a remarkably egoless approach, I think. You want to be close to that person because it excites you to be in their creative orbit and field. But also, you've got this creative confidence where you kind of know your own ability and how you can do things, and get things done, which is perhaps, I don't know, maybe there's more resilience and more self love there than one might expect with the former characteristic.
Yeah, I definitely have an instinct for, I see something and I know how it needs to be, and I just want to do it. And
Mm.
then if I can't do it, then I have to just be able to walk away completely and not engage with it at all, because I can't resolve inside of me that something's not being done the way that I can see that it would be right to do it. But I know, like, there are certain things I really know, and there are other things I really don't know. But when it's something that you really know, you kind of need to step in and say, look, we
Yeah,
can
yeah.
we can resolve this, and we can do it well. So I guess that's the confidence that I know when the pacing is not right, or I know when the character is not fully rounded, or uh I know when the aesthetic is not at its best, or I know all those things. I have no doubt that it has to be that way. Even though I would obviously, if someone said no, it could be better this way, I'm very, very, that's where I love the collaboration process. But
Mm.
yeah, I do have a
And you think you lean towards hearing that out and making that then the collaboration and finding the best answer.
yeah. So for instance, with the editor, I knew exactly what I wanted to achieve, and I knew what was acceptable or not acceptable. But she had equally high standards, I think, and because she had the experience as an editor, we were able to say, no, cut it, don't have it, pace needs to move. Or so I guess when you work with someone who has that same conviction,
Mm.
then that's very compelling, isn't it? Luckily, we had the conviction in the same direction.
Would you say your artistic instincts in that way have come from experiences as an actor, as a creative person along the way, where you've honed that and you've seen it work out certain ways? Or would you say that that's something that's always been there and has, even as a kid and perhaps throughout your upbringing, you were given certain things and opportunities and way of looking at life or the world that, you've just honed year on year? Where would you say that sense comes from?
I think it's instinct, actually, because even when you're acting on stage, you know the timing, don't you? You have like an inner clock, if you like, that
Mm.
you pace the conversation, or you're listening, you're responding, but that has a rhythm to it, or a pace to
Mm.
it.
Mm.
It's musical in some ways, isn't it? There's
Mm.
just a kind of beat, a human beat, that you can
Mm.
hear it or you don't hear it.
Mm. Do you think that's something you're kind of born with? Or do you think that because you've played music all your life?
I think you're probably born with it. I mean, we met when we were 18,
Mhm.
and we had it, didn't we? We were, it was almost responding to that instinct that we had, that caused us to choose to study drama. And play that out.
I would say that I probably knew when I was a kid playing in scenes that there was something here that I had an instinct towards finding out more about. And, it maybe made me more capable than certain kids my age when I was, auditioning for drama school or NYMT or whatever, the school play. But it's definitely also got better through training, right? And experience and observation, and the fact that I've watched 1,000 plays and I've also been in a bunch of them. So you get that clock tuned. Um, but how about your upbringing? Because your upbringing was very different and unique and peripatetic. I know we've both been privileged in certain ways, but also, I think it wasn't ubiquitous or uniform or expected, your privilege always, right?
I had quite a culturally interesting upbringing from the age of 8, because my parents moved to Peru, which was a big shock to me because I'd had quite a sheltered, suburban, classic English sort of housing estate upbringing before that near Nottingham. And suddenly we were in Peru in a very dusty, hot, smelly, chaotic, dangerous Lima. But very quickly that suited me. I felt so at home in that kind of chaos and in that edgy, just anything could happen place and I suppose the diversity of the characters there, many of whom were unbelievably poor. My parents worked in the shanty towns. Yeah, there's so much colour and vibrancy and humanity within that I suppose I was exposed to very young. And then coming to boarding school at 11 in the Cotswolds, where it was all Range Rovers and black labs and Argas and beautiful manor houses. I saw that side of life as well and observed those characters. So probably because I was moved around a lot, I became a passive observer, I would say, of life, because I saw so much of it in different strains. And my parents weren't there really from the age of 11 because I didn't fly back to Peru all the time to see them. I had to fly on my own sometimes, like 24 hours, or, those flights in the 80s were long flights. I think probably the biggest thing I learned at RADA was to just be in the stillness and listen, and maybe that was something I'd done without realizing it throughout my childhood, but being able to just be present and listen and react to the stimulus around you that were being given to you in the moment. So that's a skill that I think I honed, and maybe that's where your instinct gets even stronger, because you're just letting it inform you rather than trying to control it.
That's brilliant. I think there's a confidence you need for that in the end as a performer,
Yeah.
because so often we get into the idea of being a performer, the role of being an actor as a young person, or that kind of attention-seeking person, for want of a better word. You feel like you have to pull focus, pull attention, create a reason for being there and justify it and get validation for it. And I think you're right. At drama school, I certainly learned how there is interest enough in yourself as you are and as a listening vessel and a responding vessel without actually coming up with anything new or extraneous or additional, even though there's some styles and some call for that. And definitely people do that well and make careers out of it, and certain productions require it. Yeah, there's a confidence from doing the antithesis to that.
Yes.
And learning how to do that young is quite a big ask. You must have felt quite dislocated.
Yeah, I did. But I was always sort of an outsider, weirdly, I think. So, and as a child, you do adapt to whatever situation you're thrown into. But I don't know if you remember, we did a dance project at university that I did on my own. And the only reason I did it on my own was because no one had asked me to do it with them.
Caroline, you're breaking my heart.
I know.
Shit. Yes, I know the term you're talking about.
It or anything. And I did this really random dance, and I remember you saying at the end, you said, that was extraordinary. Like, where did you come up with that? And it was literally just me and my halls of residence. I'd recorded some weird sounds off Radio 4 and done this sort of very abstract thing, but was a sort of last-ditch attempt at, well, I'm on my own, so I might as well come up with it. Um, and weirdly, that comes to mind a lot because I was the only person that did it on my own, and everyone else had a partner. And I sort of think it's always been that way. Even when I was 4 and we did a sort of primary school assembly performance, and all the girls in the class got to sing Daisy, Daisy, give me an answer, do.
Oh, yeah.
They all got these pretty dresses and they did a little thing. And I had the song, my old man said, follow the van and don't dilly-dally on the way. And I had my hair in curlers and I had this ridiculous, horrible dressing gown and like slippers and looked like an absolute bag lady. And all the other girls had got to be these beautiful swans, with their princes doing their little love song. And so I think it was always going to be the way that I was marginalized for some reason. I don't know.
Well, I'm sorry if I was any part of your marginalization back then. I think we were all trying to make up for shortcomings that we were feeling about ourselves. I think you've got this ability, though, haven't you, there, rather than feel totally crushed by the fact that you were last one picked by the football team or what have you, to reach further into yourself and your resilience and your creativity to find an opportunity to express yourself. You're not crushed by the absence of it, which we do get demoralized. I mean,
Yeah.
you must have felt demoralized at times, both through the film and with regards to, acting after RADA and so on.
Mm.
What's it like when it hits you, when you get to your lowest? What is that like, and how do you find your way out of that?
Yeah, it's totally crushing, and I have very low self-esteem a lot of the time, and having talked about the confidence, of the flip side, there's no confidence because ultimately you do need validation from other people, don't you? And that,
Yeah.
whether that's being picked to do a dance project or just someone recognizing your work, and it's very, very isolating to be an actor or an artist who's not with others and not being validated. So yeah, there's so many places you could slip into, dark places that you could slip into very, very easily. And I guess exercise and, self-care is all part of that. Staying well mentally and physically, I think, is
Yeah.
something I try to do. Hope is a huge asset that I think I've always had, but not everyone has. People lose hope, don't they? And the fact that I can't just sit and do nothing, and that's how the film came out, because I would have, if I hadn't done the film, I just would have felt sad for the rest of my life. I think that it just never happened in spite of all the investment. I just would have been desperately sad. There is that compulsion of I've just got to keep trying and got to keep reinvesting, and I find ideas come to me easily, and I'm sure it's even harder for people who don't get that sort of inspiration to, oh, I could try this or I could try that. But it's very hard. It's really hard to
Do you
be.
have a difficulty selecting the ideas to know which ones are the good ones that you should push forward? Because by the sounds of it, you can't do many quickly. You do one for a long time.
Yeah. No, I mean, I have I have lots of ideas, and they play in my mind, and so, I just allow them to grow in their own time. And once I fixed on this idea of 1977, then you start thinking about the characters, and then so many things play into your understanding of them. And actually, I've been writing for a year, probably a year and a half, and in that time, things have happened that have caused me to know the characters better or love them more,
Mm,
and therefore
mm.
be able to build them better. So I think that time is actually quite a gift, isn't it? That you can just muse on things. But if you were working on a commercial deadline or something, you wouldn't quite have that in the same way.
No, you've found a cadence perhaps that represents who you are and how you live your life. And for better or for worse, you live a full life with 3 children and you've moved around a lot. I know you sometimes in France, sometimes in England, sometimes you grab a, trip somewhere else. Never extravagant, always keeping everything very tight. I know that's never easy, but because you choose that, I guess the rhythm for your creativity and the
Yeah.
projects that you look into and that you want to do for yourself can never just get poof, 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 just done quick.
Yeah.
And you've got amazing patience, I think. Whether I see you the way you've, made your homes or make your creative projects, you've got patience too. Am I right?
Yeah, if things are evolving, yes. But it's all about having that vision, knowing the arc of the journey towards the end of that vision, and then as long as you're on that arc and you're moving closer, then it's great. The moment that stagnates, it's really hard, I think.
Yeah.
And that's where it's challenging for actors out of work who they have no sort of agency over moving that art forward. So
Yeah.
that's where you need to create on your own.
For sure. Well, you are very much poster woman for that kind of stuff. Even before you had an agent, before you had RADA and so on as the kind of usual building blocks to a career that, say, I've had and built on to a certain degree, you were far more ingenious and sort of, you have more agency and more self-belief in your need to do that than most people. And so I suppose it was always inevitable you'd get to a place where that was your main facility.
Yeah, maybe. I've always wanted someone to just come along and scoop me up and do it for me, but it hasn't happened, and it's probably good that it hasn't happened.
Do you think we find, to a certain degree, are we the products of our natures, or are we sometimes overridden and treated badly by context, despite our natures?
Are we just a product of a chaotic world, or is there some divine purpose or destiny, and are our natures aligned with that? I couldn't answer, in all honesty, but
To take the heat off you slightly to what is a rather difficult question, I sort of feel more and more as I grow older, there is a nature that I am finding. I've become more myself as I go through life, and that's the goal, I suppose. You shed things and you get clear about certain things as you go. And I realize that some of the dreams I had when I was a younger person, and some of the goals I set myself, even subconsciously, were perhaps for a different person than I was at the time, and who I know I've got closer to becoming now. And that sometimes I recognize my nature isn't right for that. I would not have enjoyed that as much as I think I would have done. I would have not have got from it what I thought I was driven by, because those primary colors are quite strong, and as a young person you only pick up on certain frequencies of color sometimes, but in time you can see what those really entail and what that's really about. And I think it can surprise me how little affinity I have towards that, really, and greater affinity towards things which I have ended up doing more of. Um, and you sort of find the right room for your nature, I suppose. As it makes me feel that nature does come through in the end, and it's about recognizing that as early and healthily and as lovingly as possible.
yeah, and sometimes the things that you want when you're young, you're just not ready for in some
Mm.
ways, or if you had them straight away, you wouldn't appreciate them. I think if I'd had like a really busy career after drama school, I would have absolutely loved it. I don't think I can deny that I would have loved working, but I would have been less grateful for it perhaps, or more frustrated when it didn't go the way that I wanted it to go. And, I suppose you get spoiled a little bit maybe with choice, or um I think I can be probably the artist that I was really capable of being more now that I've just had to really find it on my
Mm.
own thing. Think I do agree with you, but then also we evolve so much through the ages, don't we? You and I are both nearly 50, and it's quite an age, isn't it? Where you think, gosh, I'm on the one hand was hopefully halfway through our lives, which is amazing, because you could think we could relive our whole lives now, and we've got all this wisdom and all this experience. We can start from fresh now and do it all better.
I definitely think there's a new chapter to be had if we are given the luck and fortune of health and longevity, which our society and times gives us better than any other generation before us. So, and because also we're lucky enough to be performers who work with our bodies and our voices and our minds in a sort of very engaged way, I think we have a good opportunity, perhaps having let go of the vagaries of youth and the temptations of all of that, to sort of live a long and healthy life and make the most of our physicality and creativity. And very much with this wisdom and experience gathered of 25 years or more working in this vein. Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to it. Hoping that I don't get knocked off my bike on my way to the theatre tomorrow or whatever. And I think there is there's definitely a strength in the calling of that or recognition of that, particularly when we look at what else is happening in technology and where AI might be supplanting, the creative mind with or more sort of automated facility and creation. I think, boiling down or focusing down on that kernel of kind of organic creativity that we've got through experience is probably our greatest strength going forward.
And organic creativity that's come from an era pre-internet, which we will be the last generation to have known a world without internet and without mobile phones, and to have actually had books. And I wrote all my essays at university by hand. I think I typed out my dissertation, but we went into the library and we researched things. To have had that experience that everyone grieves now, you hear people saying we need to get back to books, we need to get back to vinyl, or that texture of the experience which we grew up with. We have that in living memory to use as our kind of soulful gift back to the next generations of, we have this wisdom because we interacted in this way. Not to say that they won't have a different wisdom, but it is a valuable thing to share, isn't it? And to keep
I
living.
feel the same way about acting on stage is that, going back on stage now, which I do periodically. I'm not so, like it's not every year that I'm on stage, but like the last time I was on, AI was really just a tiny voice, even though the strikes were going on in America around what AI was doing to writers and potentially performers. I hadn't really arrived here as something that I was engaging with. And so I was happy to be on stage, organically sort of engaging acoustically with an audience. But this time I'm very much aware of what's changed and what we expect to change very quickly around us within the acting profession and about communicating stories as a performer. And I was like, thank God I've had 25 years of being an actor who knows what it's like and was motivated in being on stage with an audience with a good text, end of. Because I know that there's a heartbeat there. There's a true kind of communion with my fellow person there that I'm not sure everyone's going to pick up on via performance in the future, both as a consumer and as a partaker of it. To know that this is the source blood of what it's like to be an actor, 3,000 years old. I think it will become more powerful and more valuable, but it will become less common, perhaps, that people will know what the import of that discovery is in themselves as a young person. Because discovery as an actor for going forward, I want to be an actor, will be led by imagery that's not even recorded. It's all generated. And the idea of what voice can do and what, expression can do physically in a space will not necessarily be the first port of call for a performer going forward. So I think it's great that we've got our feet in that soil and not one of more artificial loam and mulch going forward. And I suppose that's what I'm going to hang on to as best I can going forward. But for Shalborne, right? I mean, your film that you've completed and has been screening. Tell us about where it's going and where it is right now, and where we might see it in the future.
Yeah, so Shalborne is now available to watch on Yoreflix, YOREFLIX. That is a new subscription-based streaming platform which focuses on historical drama, and it's available in Europe, and it will be shortly available in the US and Canada. Founded by the brilliant Imogen Cooper, so she launched it in November, so it's quite a new vision, but it's brilliant. And Shelbourne sits very well in a curated program of material, and she will continue to upload content and grow that over time. And that felt right to put Shalborne there rather than on a bigger streaming platform where it might get lost. And I suppose Imogen has started Your Flicks with a similar inspiration that I started Shalborne. You know, she has a vision for this streaming platform, because everyone loves historical dramas, and it's just great to have it all in one space. So
yeah.
I really connected with her on that. So I feel like we have a good creative relationship as well. Again, if it was with a bigger streaming platform, I just wouldn't have any of that connection at all. Probably about 2 years finding a distributor for Shelbourne, and I was really pleased that they liked the film, they validated it, but in the end, I just felt that I was giving away too much of the artistic ownership for what would be a bit of a bleak landscape of distribution. So maybe like aeroplanes or screening in places I'd never imagined that it might screen. It was too unfocused and too impersonal, I think, for this project. And I'm currently also screening it in film clubs, and that has been the most rewarding experience. When I did the UK, there was a cinema tour of it where some of the screenings I went to and did a Q&A, and I did that all throughout the Southwest, and met wonderful audiences who would watch the film and afterwards feedback why they'd loved it or they wanted to ask questions about it. And the thing I saw there was how cinema brings communities together in the same way that theatre does. It provokes conversation, and people go for the night out. You know, it's an event, it's a Q&A with the director. So they're people who really want to know about film and how it's made. So that in itself was just amazing. And to be able to sit with people watching my film, to hear when they laughed or when they sort of, you know, felt moved. And it was like a theatre experience, really. And it made me realize that cinema is very precious and cinema is very different to film, actually. All the work that went into formatting the film into DCPs and making sure that the sound was right, and for surround sound, you know, all these sort of creative processes that go into a film for cinema is very different to just a film for a streaming platform. And I know lots of directors say, I want the film to have a cinema run because that's the art form. So that also made me see film in a different way and have a different ambition about what I want to create. I want to create cinema, not just for TV. The community element of that is really great. And so, yeah, so going forward, it'll screen in film clubs, hopefully nationally. I'm just contacting all the film clubs that I can, because everyone seems to love it when they see it. And there are certain cinema chains who are keeping them going in a time when people stopped going to the cinema, obviously through COVID, and now they're coming back to those independent cinemas.
But is there a model that this experience shows you where if you were to focus, maybe you are doing this with your new film, very much on that destination, that you can see where the financing can work?
There is a model. If 2,000 cinema clubs, for instance, bought the license to my film, I would cover the costs of making it. That's not really taking into account my time in all of that process of selling it and marketing it. But there would be maybe some of that time would be covered. But there is definitely a model, I think, for an independent film, which would have to have a very low budget, because now independent films are sort of 3 million to 5 million is a tiny budget, whereas definitely wasn't anywhere near that. And it is really, really hard to make your money back on an independent film. But I do think that there's such a space for really well-made, well-told stories which reach local communities and which bring people together in just a happy experience. You know, it doesn't have to have lots of CGI, and it doesn't have to have lots of action, and it doesn't have to have sex, and it doesn't have to have all these, you know, dramatic things happening. So yeah, I would hope my next film will be very English, in the best way that we can be, and representing all that England means to a whole spectrum of people. I hope I can reach that universal audience. I was really surprised with Shalborne that it premiered in Toronto, and there were people from all over the world there who saw it and loved it, but particularly There was a Mexican man who came up to me afterwards and said how much he'd loved it. And I had a Nigerian woman, and there was a Chinese man, and all these people coming up to me with totally different cultural backgrounds to me who'd really identified with the character, who was an Edwardian woman, Devon. I thought, that's great. You connected with her on a human level. That's all you can hope for, isn't it, as an artist?
So do you think the lesson from that really is you can dig into your specific, even though you are doing it in the lens of Edwardian, England, woman in Devon, etc. We know that you connected to that material sort of subconsciously, very personally,
Yeah.
but also you were being very specific in the lens of the context, the
Yeah.
era, the politics, the female plight then, and the aesthetic of that. And that was, as you say, very specifically English or you-ish, but that seems to still open up as a universal. Is there an equation there that you're going to emulate in your next film, or are you going to do something different?
Yeah, definitely. It's about humanity, isn't it? And I think if you're 100% honest in what you're doing, people will love it. Just that's the bottom line. Doesn't matter who you are and where you're from, if you're really honest. And there's a kind of love, isn't there, I think, that goes into creation. If it's a pure love in the creation of it, that will also be very infectious.
I wish you all the best with that, Caroline, your film, your new one. And, in the continued journey of Shalborne, which doesn't sound like it's over, that it will keep going and you want to keep promoting it. And in a way that's now, another full-time job that you probably have to add to your list.
Yeah. The more, if people watch Shalborne, I hope they'll get excited about number 2 and that I can grow my audience.
I think they would be. And when you know what's gone into it and how it was made too and how much time it took, then it becomes even more of a marvel. It's a complete inspiration to see what you've managed to achieve through your own tenacity and creativity and bringing people along with you and how inspired they were to do it and to stick with you. You'll always outwork anyone you're on set with, I think, particularly if it's your own set. And I know you have a burning fire in you to keep going and to keep creative. I hope that you also find satisfaction and joy in what you're achieving. You're living one of the most creative lives I know, and the production there is still of highest note. But good luck with the streaming. I look forward to seeing that and, using that to see the film again.
Yes, do subscribe to Your Flicks. It seems to be where things are going, doesn't it? Sort of moving away from the noise of everything, having too much choice.
Well, good luck with that. And thank you so much for your time. You are a resilient artist, for sure. And I wish you all the best with everything you do.
Thanks, Elliot.
So that was my conversation with Caroline Corrie. Find her film Shalborne on Your Flicks, the link to which is attached to the notes of this publication. Thanks for watching, listening, and if you feel like it, subscribing. Tune in again for more conversations on The Resilient Artist. Thanks and goodbye.